What secret have you and your sibling managed to keep from your parents? That my little brother didn't break his arm playing baseball. He broke his arm while we were sword fighting with baseball bats and I saw a shot and I took it. Nice username by the way. Just completely shattered his arm. Same to you. That my sister got arrested in college for stealing hay to spread around a friend's yard as a hearty duck. You had to find an adult who knew how to bail her out. BC I was 17. Then wait 4 hours just to drive her drunkards back to her dorms. Her punishment from the judge was to volunteer at a local barn shoveling hay and horse poops around. My brother and I had a fire get out of control and completely burned the entire backyard and started catching the hedge along the house on fire. We got it all put out, then used a bedsheet to rake up several loads of leaves from back in the woods to create a new carpet of leaves over the yard. We still haven't told them and that was more than 20 years ago. I was only about 9-10. When my older brother would get home from high school he would constantly ring the doorbell for me to open the door. He has his own keys but he just kept ringing. It annoyed me almost every day. One day I start yelling out to open it himself. He kicks the window by the door. It shatters and a tiny shard cuts my foot. No big deal. Just a band-aid fix. We call mum and dad saying someone threw a rock. And my brother even found a rock outside as evidence. Mum and dad call the police later when they get home. Police arrive. There's a full report done. And my brother and I have never mentioned the story again. I'm glad that it wasn't some hardcore detective sheet where he asked how I injured my foot. For some dumb reason my parents' high school reunion was in January in Ohio. They decided to get a hotel closer to the event space since we lived in a rural area, leaving the kids alone in the house. Naturally we threw a giant party. Everything seemed to be fine around 3 AM after cleaning up, but we noticed that people had parked on the grass leaving tire tracks all over the lawn. We were totally ducked. The next morning we woke up and were blessed to find a full blanket of snow covering everything in sight. It stayed on the ground for ample enough time that the tracks became totally unnoticeable. Parents still don't know 19 years later. When we were in middle high school, my younger brother used to get in trouble at school a lot. Whenever the school called our house to inform my parents, I would answer the phone and pretend to be my dad. I took care of some minor debt he had with some shady drug dealer that had him in trouble. He died last month, unrelated, and took it to the grave. There's no point telling them now, so I will too. Dear Mum, you weren't so tired from wrapping Christmas presents that you put them in the wrong stockings. Me and Robert bartered the size and shape of them in the morning before you got up. Sorry XX. My brother is asexual. My dad is one of the macho Don Draper types who used to chase his secretaries around the desk back in the day, so I always made up a bunch of bullshit stories about all the poontang my bro used to pull in college just to impress the old man. That my brother's truck wasn't technically broken into. He accidentally locked his keys in the truck while shopping at Goodwill for a tie for his interview he was on his way to. So he immediately called the insurance company telling them his car was broken into and was asking if it was covered. They said yes. So he takes the tire iron out of the bed of his truck and smashed his own window in to get his keys. Insurance fixed the window and he got the job. Our parents would drop my older brother and me off at church for Sunday school and services each week. When they drove away, he and I would often sneak off and hang out with friends who lived nearby the church instead. They thought we were learning all about their religion, but we were actually learning about girls instead. I got hit by a snowplow, rather. The snow coming off the plow, while building a snow fort right next to the road. Shot out of the fort and tossed 10 feet away. I still hate plows. That's gotta hurt. I was probably sore the next day, but I don't remember the impact hurting. It was a lot of snow and ice flying at my face though. We were always told to stay away from the road and I didn't listen. Got wrecked. Sister and I were once playing with our little brother and throwing him onto our parents' bed. I was holding his feet. She was holding his hands. On the third swing we would let him go flying onto the king-sized waterbed. On one throw, sister was laughing too much and let go of brother's hands right at the bottom of the swing. I ended up swinging him by his feet into the bottom of a bedpost. His head was split open a 1/4 inch or so. Bled as head wounds do. We cleaned everything up and convinced him to stop crying by the time that mom and dad got home. He was maybe 5 at the time. Half of these are older siblings convincing the baby to do dumb shit. Good to know we all think the same way. That my little sister didn't break her arm by accidentally falling off the bunk bed, but rather that she broke her arm when we flung her off of it during a game of King of the Hill, bunked. My parents were out at aerobics class. In a very pre-cell phone age. We just tried to keep her comfortable and waited patiently for them to get home. We did finally tell them last year, and they thought it was hilarious. We kept that secret for close to 30 years. My younger sister went to a party in high school and got blackout drunk. She was staying the night with a friend that night, and her mom brought her home about 2 in the morning. Me and my younger brother carried her into our house to her basement bedroom. I locked her in her room, set my alarm for 6 AM, and got a few hours of sleep. I got her up the next morning. She was still drunk. Snuck her out the back door. She walked about a mile to a gas station. Called her friend who came and picked her up. My mom picked her up around noon. When she passed out, she fell and scraped her temple and cheek. My mom questioned her. She claimed she'd gotten in a fight. 30 years later, my mom was reminiscing about that night and the fight. We spilled the beans. My mom was stunned that we got away with it because she was such a light sleeper and I never got away with any kind of deception as a teen. I don't think they know about the time we got into the unwrapped Christmas present stash and looked at all our presents about a week before Christmas. They never said anything about it. At least. But I felt really guilty about it. Especially when it came time to unwrap and I had to fake surprise. Never wanted to get into the Christmas stash again after that. At one point, we were playing with our pet lizard outside and he ran away. So we panicked and went off to the pet store to replace him before the parents got home. We confessed that one to them after a few days. Mostly because the replacement was pretty obviously a different lizard. They responded with "Oh. Okay. We honestly wouldn't have noticed if you hadn't replaced him. Why would we care if you have 3 lizards or 4? I have a story based on the opposite. My parents and I had a secret we kept from my brother. He lied to my parents a lot and had a tendency to do whatever he wanted regardless of the consequences. So, my parents had that family locator plan so they could track him. Basically, they could see him as a little pink dot on a map. It was actually a good thing that they had it, as they were able to find him after he left a party one night with a concussion. Somehow, my brother never knew. Eventually, my parents forgot about the locator when my brother was in college. But they still had it until one of my brother's best friends, still not sure why my parents told him about it, informed my brother that he was nothing more than a pink dot to my parents. Good times. When I was about 8, my little sister and I broke a candy jar. We told our stepmom when she called and she said it's okay. Throw away all the candy, it's old anyways. Being the unsupervised children we were, we ate every last piece. Probably about 300 plus pieces of candy total. The next day we were throwing up all day and our parents assumed it was the flu. We didn't touch another piece of candy for several months after that. Sometimes they ask and I order tons of junk food, buckets of Popeyes, big pizza for all etc. When our parents aren't home, we feed like animals after 4 months of winter who found a fresh prey. Then we destroy all the evidence. Other than that, we don't have many secrets. We aren't doing drugs or robbing people as far as I know. But sometimes I skip school to sleep. And my sis sees me. I just tell her to don't tell our dad. She just replies with okay. She kept many of my lazy secrets. We are a boring family. When I was younger I went to Walmart and my brother was in charge of me. Well, I loved to run away from him while he chases me. Anyway, a man grabbed me while I was running and my brother saved me somehow, so I was almost kidnapped. I'm one of 3 kids and my sister, with help from me, has managed to hide 2 tattoos, one above her ankle and one under her armpit. My parents hate tattoos, and I mean hate. So much so that there is a clause in my parents' will which states that for each tattoo on their child's body, 10% of that tattooed child's inheritance is to be taken away and then split to go to the other untattooed children's inheritances. My mom collects these painted plates and hangs them up around the house. There is one plate with this creepy old man and lady on it that for some reason my mom really loved but me and my brothers and sister hated. And she knew how much we disliked it. Well, one day mom come home to see her beloved plate on the floor in pieces. She sent each of us to our rooms and interrogated us individually. Each one of us gave the exact same answer: I don't know. It was like that when we got home from school. It must have fell on its own. She was pissed off and we had our TV privileges taken away for a couple of days because we were obviously all lying. But we never had to see that damn dish again. Now we all know exactly how that plate came to be destroyed. And every now and then my mom will still ask. But the answer is always the same: I don't know. It was like that when we got home from school. It must have fell on its own. It's been 15 years and it will be a secret we take to our graves. I blew myself up when I was 16 after a whole summer of blowing up other sheet with black powder we found in the back of a shed. My brothers and I have never been sure if I got away with it or if my parents just figured I'd learned my lesson. We knocked off the glass window in our room when we were fighting and it fell 3 stories down. Fell on top of our car. We said it fell because of strong winds. Not me, but my kids. They are 10 and 12 and they have a live chicken in the garage they saved from our hillbilly neighbor. They think I don't know. It's frickin' hilarious listening them talk in code. So funny. My little brother, 9, and me, 11, once left our cat out in a blizzard for 3 days. He accidentally got out and we could never find him. My parents were both stuck at our grandmother's because of the blizzard while him and me were stuck at home. On the 3rd night we heard a howling from the back porch. We go downstairs to see a howling, wet, shivering cat on our back porch. We didn't even recognize him at first. Eventually we let him in. Washed him in our bathtub. Dried him off and Skyped a friend of my dad's who happened to be a vet. He was fine. Parents never found out from me, my brother, or the family friend. I didn't split my head open falling backwards on my scooter. My best friend at the time threw a big as rock at my head and I didn't want him to get in trouble. Even though he didn't even apologize or feel bad about it. I also didn't want people to freak out before my parents got me because my plain white shirt was literally soaked in blood. I just grabbed an empty fruit punch Gatorade out of the trash and said I spilled all over myself. I was never allowed to do anything onwards without a helmet outside. I drove my brother and sister to school when I was in high school back in the mid-80s. One morning. It had been raining all night and all morning. My sister asked me to pull my car across the yard and up to the front door so she wouldn't get wet. We had a huge yard. Over an acre. I got stuck in the land barge I was driving. A 1972 Monte Carlo. Cutting 2 deep trenches 100 feet long across the yard to the front door. Absolutely murdered the yard. My dad would get so pissed if we ever drove on the grass. No, we didn't have a nice yard. He was just an angry drunk, so I had to fix it. Fast. When we got home from school in the afternoon, my brother and I collected pine cones and pine needles from all over the yard and covered up the evidence. It was so obvious, but my dad stayed drunk and didn't immediately notice. The next spring, he saw the trench and thought he did it. He died a few years back. Not sure he ever told him. Told my mom a few years ago. She laughed. My mother purchased a TV that could be locked with a pin and she did. My brother and I figured it out though, as it was very easy. 4,321. However, after a few weeks she caught on to it since the TV was warm when she got home. So she changed the pin to something complicated. However, a few days later we distracted her while she entered the pin for us and watched what buttons she pressed. From now on we put a fan next to the TV to keep it cool, and we also ran our fingers across the screen to remove static charge when she got home. Worked for years and years. It had snowed and me and my sister were walking to school. Our road was really icy and steep, so I decided to do a neat little skid. No worries. Bit shaky but a decent slide. Now my sister tried. Except she lost her balance. Windmilled her arms and punched me straight in the face. Blood on the ice from my bleeding nose. So we'd left the house and walked back home within 5 minutes with me covered in blood. Just told mum that I'd slipped and fallen, so we both got the day off.